Jamal Cross leaned against the counter of Cross Spirits, surveying the warming glow of the late afternoon sun filtering through the dusty air of his liquor store. 5 years had brought him peace after a lifetime in combat, and it had grown into a sanctuary for both the neighborhood and himself. But like the curtains of a theater, the time for respite was about to close. He'd spent years in war zones, dodging bullets, dismantling criminal networks, and navigating the glimpses of humanity amidst chaos. The military had sharpened him into a weapon, but life had taught him to be more than just that. It taught him about loyalty, community, and the desperate need for a place to call home. The bell above the door jingled. Drawing his eyes to Mrs. Wilkins, an elderly woman shuffled in, her shaky hands cradling a bottle of peach brandy as if it were the world's greatest treasure. "Evening, baby," she said, her toothy grin brightening the dim store. Jamal couldn't help but grin back, though his heart felt heavy. As he placed her purchase in a bag, the door swung open again, and Jamal's smile faltered. In walked Sergeant Cole Bishop and Officer Ethan Grady, the air around them crackling with unwelcome authority. Their presence filled the space with a chill that settled in Jamal's gut like a stone. He straightened, instinctively shifting from friendly store owner to the trained soldier he had once been. "Relax, Cross," Bishop said, leaning against the counter. "Just doing our rounds. The city is making some changes. New rules. New expectations." Jamal's brow furrowed. "What kind of changes?" Bishop flashed a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The kind that keeps you in business. You pay a small fee, and we make sure everything runs smoothly. Health inspections? All good. Trouble? We'll be the first ones on the scene." It wasn't the first time he'd heard these veiled threats, but today was different. Jamal felt an undercurrent of anger rising within him, the same anger that had fueled him across deserts and battlefields. "If I don't pay." Bishop's expression soured slightly, and Grady stepped forward, his eyes dancing with excitement as if he thrived on the tension. "You take a risk, Cross. A big risk. We've shut down places for less." Jamal scoffed, feeling the tension in his muscles. "You think I'm afraid of cowards in uniforms?" Bishop's smirk wavered for just a moment, but it returned, darker this time. "We'll be back, Cross. You'll regret this." Once they left, the air felt suffocating, thick with unspoken threats. Mrs. Wilkins had worried for him, but he'd reassured her with a smile. Now that smile felt like a mask slipping. As the evening wore on, Jamal swept the floor, his mind racing. The police were no longer his protectors. They were turning into the very monsters he'd fought against. But tonight, he wouldn't shuffle in fear. He wouldn't let shadows dictate his life or business. The glow of his neon sign trembled as darkness descended. And as he locked up, a sense of foreboding closed in around him. The tranquility of his sanctuary had been shattered, and it humored him that the world could change so swiftly. The next day, a storm rumbled in the distance, but it wasn't the weather that had stirred something inside Jamal. It was anger, and it was rising like tempests on the horizon, waiting for release. By morning, he was back at the store, but the world around him felt different. As he unlocked the door, his heart stopped. The window was shattered, glass glittering like dangerous stars scattered across the sidewalk. A snarl of anger burned in his chest. It wasn't just vandalism. It was a message, a declaration that someone wanted him gone. Jamal stepped inside carefully, dread pooling at the base of his spine. He spotted something on the floor. A small plastic bag ripped open, white powder spilling out like secrets meant to be hidden. His stomach twisted. They hadn't just sent a warning, they were setting him up. The doorbell jangled, and he turned to see Bishop and Grady storming in like wolves scenting blood. But this time, Jamal wouldn't shrink away. "Looks like we found what we were looking for," Grady chuckled, eyes gleaming with malicious glee. Jamal's muscles tensed. The fight was on. "Get out," he said firmly, each word laced with a quiet fury. Bishop leaned in, eyes narrowing. "Or what? You'll tell people? You think anyone will listen?" "No," Jamal said, his voice steady. "But I'm not going down without a fight." Suddenly, the air cracked with the tension of the impending storm. And as the first blow fell, Jamal knew he was about to show them the kind of fight they had awakened. The battle for his life, his store, and his community had begun. The battle for his life, his store, and his community had begun. Jamal's instincts kicked in, sharp and unyielding as he readied himself for what was coming. He'd been trained for moments like this, where survival depended on speed, precision, and the sheer will to overcome all odds. Grady lunged first, fists flying. Jamal sidestepped just in time, feeling the wind from the missed punch whip past his face. The younger officer was reckless, fueled by a need to prove himself, and Jamal seized the opportunity. He countered with a swift jab straight into Grady's ribs, feeling the satisfying impact as the officer grunted in surprise and staggered back. Bishop's expression hardened, realizing this wasn't going to be a typical intimidation tactic. Jamal could see the calculation flicker in his eyes. "You think you're a hero, but all you're going to do is get yourself hurt," Bishop spat, advancing with predatory intent. Jamal wasn't about to show fear. "No, you're wrong. I'm not just some store owner. I'm the man standing in your way." His voice was steady, and with that, he surged forward, fists flying. The two men collided like storms, trading blows in a rapid exchange that echoed through the store. Each punch landed with a sickening thud, but Jamal fought through the pain, determination propelling him forward. He ducked under another swing from Bishop, using the moment to pivot and drive his elbow into the sergeant's stomach. Bishop stumbled, but immediately recovered, drawing on sheer force of will. He thrust his knee upward, catching Jamal in the side, a sharp reminder of the injuries that throbbed beneath his skin. Wincing, Jamal fought through the wave of pain crashing over him, instead harnessing it, channeling it into the next move. With a rapid spin, Jamal twisted away and swung his leg out, knocking Grady off his feet. The young officer hit the ground hard, and Jamal wasted no time. He turned next to Bishop, who was charging again, eyes wild with anger. Jamal feinted left, then darted right, tackling Bishop off balance and sending him sprawling against a shelf stacked with liquor bottles. Glass shattered everywhere, a sparkling explosion of shrapnel as the bottles hit the floor. Amidst the chaos, Jamal can't help but feel a surge of adrenaline and determination surge through him. This wasn't about liquor or money. It was about reclaiming his place in the world, a world where he wouldn't let corrupt officers bully him into submission. Grady groaned as he pushed himself off the ground, eyes wide with disbelief. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he howled, exasperated. "You're making this harder than it has to be. How about you try treating people with respect for once?" Jamal shot back, fury mixing with the adrenaline in his veins. "You think this is a game?" Bishop had regained his footing, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. He laughed, a low, dark sound that sent a chill through the air. "You don't know what you're getting into, Cross. You think a couple of punches are going to matter." For a split second, Jamal faltered, doubt gnawing at the edges of his resolve. But he remembered the faces of the community, the people counting on him, the sacrifices made at the hands of men like Bishop. Raising his fists again, Jamal charged. The movement was fluid, each of his muscles worked in perfect cohesion. He slammed into Bishop with a renewed energy, driving him back, one punch landing squarely against the officer's jaw. The sergeant reeled, momentarily thrown off balance. But Grady, recovering fast, lunged at Jamal from the side, grabbing him by the waist. In that pivotal moment, Jamal felt the struggle between desperation and instinct clash violently within him. He twisted away, forcing the younger officer into a nearby shelf, sending a cascade of beer cans crashing to the floor. "Get off me, you punk!" Grady spat, scrambling to grab Jamal's collar, but Jamal ducked, moving swiftly away while sidestepping another of Bishop's wild swings. Blood pulsed through his veins, and the world around him narrowed. The store, the offices, even the sound of glass crunching beneath his feet faded into a singular moment of clarity. With a ferocious yell, Jamal capitalized on Bishop's momentary distraction, smashing his fist into Grady's face. The younger officer stumbled backward, pain etched in his expression as he hit the ground again. Before he could catch his breath, Bishop closed the gap again, this time swinging low. Jamal instinctively leaped over the attack, launching off one leg, but as he landed, Bishop's massive frame came crashing down, tackling him to the ground. Both men hit hard, the wind knocked out of Jamal's lungs. Dazed, he clenched his jaw, trying to regain his composure as Bishop mounted him, hands reaching for his throat. Panic surged. The stakes were higher than ever now. Surrounded by chaos, trapped beneath the weight of corruption and violence, Jamal needed to act fast. In a swift maneuver, he hooked his legs around Bishop's waist, pitching sideways and using momentum to shove him off. The sergeant stumbled, and in that split second, Jamal scrambled to his feet as Grady staggered back onto his own. "Enough!" Bishop shouted, eyes blazing with rage. "You don't know who you're messing with, Cross. You think you can take us down?" Jamal pivoted, adrenaline pounding through him like a war drum as he fired back. "I'm not afraid of men hiding behind badges. You'll pay for every life you've ruined." The words hung in the air, a promise and a challenge both. Jamal was done with the shadows. This wasn't about one battle. This was a war that would see justice served, and it began here and now. Before they could respond, a siren wailed outside, piercing through the tension like a scream in the night. Jamal spotted the flashing lights through the door's shattered glass, hope igniting within him. It was time for reinforcements to arrive. Bishop's expression shifted, the smug confidence faltering as the sounds of engines revving echoed closer and closer. He took a step back, weighing his options while Jamal grasped his chance. If he could hold them off just a little longer. "Let's go." Grady barked. Panic scrawled on his face now. "We need to get out of here." "No." Bishop snapped. "We're not leaving without finishing this." "Finishing what?" Jamal spat back, eyes locked on the sergeant. "More intimidation? More threats? You're losing, Bishop. You're surrounded." With a sudden burst of determination, he lunged toward Bishop, fist swinging. The sergeant caught his arm, but with a sharp twist, Jamal broke free, sending a heavy right hook into Bishop's jaw. Gritting his teeth, he pressed the attack, fists flying, the weight of his community behind each blow. But Bishop was still standing, barely. Jamal could see the rage brewing beneath the surface. They weren't finished yet. He felt every bruise, every ache, but there was no room for surrender. Outside, sirens closed in, and with it, the inevitable reckoning of everything he'd fought for. Jamal could almost hear the voices of his neighbors, the echoes of support igniting the fire inside him. This was for them, a fight not just for survival, but for redemption, justice. He wouldn't let them down. "Let's see how brave you are when the cavalry arrives," he spat, sensing the storm of chaos and adrenaline swirl around him as the world outside shifted. The moment came, the door burst open, and several uniformed officers flooded the store, weapons drawn, a mix of anxiety and determination on their faces. On the ground. "Drop your weapons," one of them shouted, aimed directly at Bishop and Grady. In that moment, Jamal seized his opportunity. The tide was turning, and he felt it deep in his bones. Bishop could fight all he wanted, but he would have to reckon with the law now. The struggle was far from over. It was only just beginning. The struggle was far from over. It was only just beginning. As the officers flooded in, Jamal locked eyes with the nearest one, his breath still coming in sharp bursts as he fought to steady his racing heart. He wouldn't let this moment slip away. He had come too far. "Arrest them," Jamal shouted, motioning toward Bishop and Grady, who were slowly backing away. The faces of his neighbors flickered in his mind, reminders of their shared struggles against the oppressive weight of corruption and fear. This moment wasn't just about him, it was about everyone they had tried to silence. The new officers moved with precision, instinct kicking in as they split into pairs and encircled the two corrupt cops. Still, Jamal sensed Bishop's smack lurking beneath the surface. He could feel the malice flowing from the man like dark smoke. Time was ticking. The outcome of this confrontation hung in the balance. With a fierce and desperate yell, Bishop lunged toward one of the officers, tackling him to the ground. "You think you can take me down?" His voice was a mixture of madness and confidence, the essence of a man who had spent years seated at the top of a cruel system. "Get down," the officer shouted, struggling to push Bishop off. Grady sprang into action too, swinging wildly at the officers now pressing in from all sides. Jamal felt the tension surge, the battle morphing once again into chaos. Jamal acted without hesitation. He rushed forward, determined to help the officers regain control. He grabbed Bishop's arm, yanking it behind the man's back and forcing him to the ground. "You're done." Jamal spat, anger coursing through him. Bishop grunted but instantly twisted his body, using his legs to kick Jamal off. The surge of adrenaline made it difficult to see clearly. Jamal barely had time to adjust before Grady charged forward, attempting to push past the crowd of officers. "Stay down, Grady," someone commanded, and the confusion was palpable. The officers were not just trying to subdue two assailants but also untangle Jamal from the mess Bishop and Grady were creating. In the whirl of bodies, Jamal caught the eyes of an officer he recognized, a woman named Officer Rivera, a new recruit who had been hopeful about the changes in the department. "Help me," he yelled, urgency coating his voice. Rivera nodded, quickly joining in, and the two of them worked to bring both officers under control. They moved together, Jamal's body fluid against Rivera's precision, as they tackled Grady to the ground, pinning him beneath their weight. Bishop, however, was still relentless. "Are you really that naive?" Bishop shouted, struggling against the pressure of multiple hands trying to restrain him. "You think this will change anything? You'll end up just like all the others, dead or in jail." Jamal felt anger bubble within him. "Not today," he snarled, tightening his grip as officers collaborated to cuff Grady. With a swift motion, they managed to subdue Bishop too, the crack of metal cuffs falling into place a satisfying sound of small triumph amidst the chaos. As they finally pulled away, Jamal leaned against the counter, his chest heaving. He could hardly catch his breath, but he was still standing. He glanced at the officers who were now hauling Bishop and Grady to their feet. Weakened but unyielding, Bishop's eyes glared with disdain as the officers led him out. "Jamal, is that you?" It was Officer Rivera. Her face was flushed with a mix of relief and disbelief. "Yeah, it's me," he replied, wiping his brow and trying to regain some sense of normalcy. "I knew they were dirty. I just didn't know how deep it all ran." Rivera shook her head, eyes narrowing. "We're gathering evidence now. But this? It was bigger than anyone thought." The police radio crackled to life, a flurry of orders pouring through. Jamal tried to focus, realizing the undercurrents of a deeper storm still swirled around them. They had exposed one thread, but many more remained in the shadows waiting to be pulled. "Get that drug evidence processed and secure the premises," another voice barked over the static. "We need a full sweep of the area. We've got bigger issues than just them." Jamal stepped closer to Rivera, urgency creeping back into his voice. "What does that mean?" She bit her lip, glancing toward the door where Bishop had just been let out. "It means they'll try to cover their traces, to clean up what they've left behind. We thought Bishop was the kingpin here, but—" She hesitated, eyes serious as she met his gaze. "I have a feeling it's about to get a lot worse." "I've got to warn Maya," Jamal said, feeling a tug of urgency grip him. "If they are targeting businesses." Before he could finish, the sound of a crash interrupted them. A nearby window shattered and a form darted into the store from outside. Jamal turned, adrenaline pouring back into his veins. A figure emerged from the broken glass, and Jamal felt a sense of dread creep along his spine. "Get down," Rivera shouted, reflexively raising her weapon. Jamal's heart raced as he recognized the figure, a wiry man with a hood pulled low over his face. He was wild-eyed, breathless. "They're coming. We have to go. Now," he pleaded, fear etched across his face. "Who?" Jamal demanded, instinctually stepping forward, prepared to defend his home and his friends. "Bishop's crew. They are mobilizing fast. You need to get out of here," he yelled. Panic surged in Jamal's chest. "We can't. We have to protect the community." "It won't matter if you're dead," the man interjected, desperation clawing at the edges of his voice. Jamal felt his pulse quicken, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "I'm not running anymore," he said, steeling himself. He reached for his phone, already dialing Maya. "I'm not going anywhere." He heard her voice on the other end, but before he could reach her, Rivera spoke again, urgency spiking through the air. "Jamal, listen. We can't hold this position. They are going to come looking for revenge. If Bishop has allies." The realization hit him hard. They needed to fortify their defenses, not just for Jamal but for everyone in the community. "Get everyone you can to safety," he said, turning to Rivera. "We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Call for backup." We need all hands on deck. On it. Rivera shouted, swift and decisive. She moved toward the door, while Jamal turned back to the trembling man, who still stood by the shattered window. What's your name? Jamal asked, steadying his gaze. Rico, he managed, barely above a whisper. I'm just trying to warn you. Rico, you're either with us or against us. We fight for our community. Jamal affirmed, feeling the weight of leadership on his shoulders. If we don't stand up now, they'll keep coming. With determination coursing through him, Jamal spoke with conviction. Get everyone in the neighborhood together. We're not going to let them push us out. Not now, not ever. Across the street, the distant wail of sirens infused every heartbeat of fear with courage, a spark to ignite the fire within. The corrupt could feel powerful, but it wouldn't last. Jamal was resolute. Today wasn't just about survival, it was about resisting tyranny in its many forms. With both excitement and fear swirling in his gut, Jamal prepared himself for what was to come. The battle was far from over. He could feel it in every fiber of his being. There would be twists and turns ahead, but for the first time, he wouldn't be navigating the shadows alone. There would be twists and turns ahead, but for the first time, he wouldn't be navigating the shadows alone. Jamal felt a fierce resolve blossom within him as he turned back toward the chaos of the store, the air electric with tension. The sirens outside had become an ominous reminder that reinforcements were on their way, but it also meant the clock was ticking. Rico, you said you saw Bishop's crew. How many of them are there? Jamal asked, urgency lacing his voice deeper. I don't know, man, Rico replied, shaking his head, eyes darting around as if the shadows themselves might spring to life. Enough to make a mess of this place, for sure. They roll deep, especially when they feel threatened. Jamal nodded, processing the information. We need to rally everyone in the neighborhood. There's safety in numbers. He turned back toward the front of the store, where Rivera was barking orders into her radio, her countenance commanding despite the chaos. Can you handle it? Jamal asked her, locking eyes with Rivera. Yeah. Just give me a sec to lock this place down, and I can help coordinate from here, Rivera replied firmly, gesturing toward the exit. You should get out there and help organize everyone. It's going to get messy. With one last look around the store, Jamal took a deep breath and darted toward the entrance. The light outside was muffled by the overwhelming sense of dread lurking just beneath the surface. He was acutely aware of how every second counted. Listen up, he shouted as he moved to the forefront of the now gathered crowd outside. We've got trouble coming our way. Bishop's crew will be looking for revenge. We need to band together, fortify our homes, and look out for each other. Nervous chatter rippled through the crowd, and he could see fear etched in the faces before him. Yet amidst the worry, determination began to grow. People stepped closer, leaning in to hear. They needed a leader, and for the first time, Jamal didn't hesitate. Rico saw them coming, he continued, raising his voice above the murmurs. We're not going to let anyone get hurt. We have each other's backs. Grab anything you can use to defend yourselves, baseball bats, tools, kitchen knives, whatever. We're not just standing by. A murmur of agreement floated back, as a few people began jogging off in different directions, urgency driving them to prepare. Jamal's heart swelled with pride as he saw neighbors he had known for years step forward, resolve hardening on their faces. This was their home, no one would take it from them. Among the crowd, he spotted Maya hurrying over. He felt a rush of relief as she approached. I heard the commotion, she said, glancing nervously toward the store. What's happening? Bishop's crew is coming for revenge, Jamal said, voice urgent. I'm rallying everyone to defend the neighborhood. We can't let them intimidate us. Let me help. Maya said fiercely. I can grab some supplies from the bakery. We need more than just weapons. We need something to keep spirits high too. Good thinking. Every bit helps, Jamal said, grateful for her quick mind. We'll need to think on multiple fronts. Supplies, morale, and we'll need a lookout. People around them began filing back into the street with makeshift weapons, bats, long sticks, and even shovels. Jamal felt a surge of solidarity blossom within the ranks of neighbors as they banded together. But as the tension in the air thickened, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was still brewing. He wiped the sweat from his brow, adrenaline churning in his stomach, the scene around him swelling with a mix of fear and fervor. "Gather at the corner," Jamal called out, gesturing toward a nearby park bench surrounded by trees. "We'll need a base to coordinate." The crowd moved as a collective, filling the area with a nervous energy. Jamal stepped up and began to organize. The noise of people gathering became a cohesive force. Next to him, Rivera emerged from the store again, carrying a heavy box filled with flashlights and portable lights. "Found these in back. Might help us stay alert," she said, forking it over to Jamal. "Hey, we can set them up around the area. It'll buy us time and reduce the chaos of the dark." "Great thinking," Jamal replied, feeling the puzzle of their defenses start to materialize. He turned back to the gathering crowd. "Gather round. Spread these out about 10 feet apart. Lighting will give us an advantage as we can see them before they see us. I want everyone alert and ready. Watch each other's backs. You'll know when they're coming." Just as he finished, a low rumble of noise rolled in from the street, the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps approaching. The unified breaths of the crowd collectively hitched. A tidal wave of anxiety washed over them. Jamal held up a hand, knowing too well what that sound could mean. "Stay calm," he said, adopting as steady a tone as he could muster. "We're ready. We'll stand together." As his words hung in the air, he could see the tension etched on the faces around him. "Together," he repeated, believing it more now than ever. Out of the shadows, figures emerged, men in dark clothes, faces hardened with taut aggression. Bishop's crew had arrived, and their expressions told of the reckoning to come. Jamal's heart raced, but he stood firm. There was no turning back. "Face front, everyone. This is our home, and we're not going to let them take it." He felt the strength of his words resonate within the gathered crowd, igniting the flames of courage against the looming storm. Bishop led the charge, his eyes wild and angrier than ever, flanked by several men holding weapons, a bat, a knife, and something that glinted in the dim light, catching Jamal's eye. "You think you can just call for backup?" Bishop taunted, a manic laugh escaping his lips. "You're all pathetic, a bunch of weaklings masquerading as a community." "Watch your words, Bishop," Jamal shot back, every ounce of confidence grounding him to the spot. "You're the one who should be afraid." Just as tension peaked, Maya appeared beside Jamal. "We won't let you hurt anyone else," she shouted, raising a makeshift weapon above her head, a rolling pin, sturdy and unwavering. Behind them, the crowd stood steadfast, a wall of determination rising to meet the threat head-on. "Enough talk," Bishop roared, raising his bat, and suddenly, the air thickened with the weight of choice. Playtime was over. Jamal's heart thundered as he prepared himself, adrenaline coursing through his veins. This was the moment that would define them all, the fight for their home, their lives, their very community. In that instant, it was clear, they were no longer victims of circumstance, but warriors ready to stand against the storm. With a yell, Jamal charged forward, rallying everyone to follow, to face the impending tide together. What had felt like just one small skirmish against the darkness was now a battle for the ages, a fusion of bravery and hope rising up against the shadows. Together, they surged forward, united against the chaos and ready to fight for what was rightfully theirs. The storm may have come, but they were ready, and they would not be pushed aside. They were a community, and this was their stand.